What's going on YouTube? Snowflakey Zemos here today with a new Master Duel deck profile. This is my Felgrand deck for Master Duel. Felgrand's a deck I've been playing a little bit more in paper recently after having held on to the cards for a long time, and then when Blue Eyes Jet Dragon came out, gave me some new stuff that I like to do with it. So I've been playing around with it, having fun, and it seemed like, Felgrand is a deck that a lot of people love based on the comments and discussions that have been generated on that video. So I thought I'd put it together, give it a crack in Master Duel, and see how it does. So with that said, let's get into the card by card. Starting off, I'm playing two copies of Blue Eyes White Dragon. Blue Eyes White Dragon is in here because it's a very strong normal dragon monster that we can send off of Dragon Shrine to get a monster in the grave and then allow us to send another dragon into the grave. And with Blue Eyes, that means in the grave we can play Blue Eyes Jet Dragon, which is just a nice little card to help boost this deck and keep things floating and moving. Something I really like that I've been trying out. So, and we're playing two copies of Blue Eyes because while we only need one in the graveyard, we definitely want to make sure one stays in the graveyard. So I'm playing two just in case one gets called by because somebody doesn't want to deal with Jet Dragon or something like that. Next, I'm playing three copies of Card Trooper. Card Trooper is a pretty cool card that we can choose a number 1 to 3 and send that many cards from the top of our deck to the graveyard, and it gains 500 attack for each. That's nice because milling cards could include any of our big dragons that we're happy to see hit the grave, and if we hit at least one, then, pretty good. It's worth doing, especially because there's not too much else to normal summon in this deck. What I like about Card Trooper over things like the Lightsworn cards, like Raiden and whatnot, is that when this card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you get to draw a card. That's just kind of a nice effect, more than the less milling of Raiden or kind of the charge of the Light Brigade package. I don't know. I just like that card replacement in addition to the mill. Feel free to sub it out for Lightsworns if you like. Next, I am playing three copies of Starliege Seyfert. This is a pretty good card that we can send any number of dragon monsters from our hand or face up on the field to the graveyard to add a dragon monster from the deck to our hand whose level equals the total levels. So that's pretty sweet. Basically, that means any of these level 8s can become any of these other level 8s. We can pitch Blue Eyes to get a Morphage Goliath, or a Morphage Goliath to get Divine Dragon Lord, or more importantly, we can pitch Archbrave to get Archbrave. And that will just get one of our dragons in the graveyard, get another in our hand that we might be able to discard off of another card like Dragon Shrine, something like that. And, it just makes it a cool thing to actually use our normal summon on. Next, I'm playing three copies of Archbrave Dragon. Archbrave Dragon is really good. If this card is special summoned from the graveyard, you can banish as many face-up spell and traps your opponent controls as possible. That's a pretty nice effect to have. And this card gains 200 attack and defense for each banish, so that's pretty nice. But most importantly, its main effect, once per turn during the standby phase, if this card is in the graveyard because it was sent there last turn, target one level 7 or 8 dragon monster in your graveyard, except Archbrave Dragon, and special summon it. So this can pull out any of our big monsters, Goliath, Felgrand, Blue Eyes, whichever one we're needing. Usually it's Goliath or Felgrand. But, it's a pretty nice card, so we send it to the grave, summon a dragon. Then later, what we want to do is summon this card back out, so if we get board wiped, we're going to be able to float into another dragon on our next turn. So 3 copies of Archbrave Dragon. Next, we're playing 1 copy of Dragon Spirit of White. Now, spell and trap card and back row removal is a little more important in Master Duel, given the best of 1 format. There's a lot more decks playing trap cards and whatnot, so I definitely want to have Dragon Spirit of White on hand in the main deck. This is a monster that's just a normal monster, which is also nice for the Dragon Shrine. And it would be nice if this card worked with Jet Dragon, like met the requirement for Jet Dragon to summon. But either way, when this card is normal or special summon, you can target a spell or trap card your opponent controls and banish it. So this is pretty cool. And then it does have a second effect that if your opponent controls a monster, you can tribute this card to special summon Blue Eyes White Dragon from your hand. That could just get it back in the graveyard to summon it later and get Blue Eyes out of your hand onto the field, which is pretty nice, give you a little attacking power. But definitely something good to have. When Grand Tusk Dragon comes out in Master Duel, this will probably become Grand Tusk Dragon, just because it can pop multiple cards. But we'll see. And so, yeah, Dragon Spirit of White definitely have something good to have on hand for taking care of back row, which is way more prevalent in Master Duel. Next is 2 copies of a Morphage Goliath. This is basically our win condition. It means that neither player can special summon monsters from the extra deck except Amorphage monsters, all of which is, who's playing Amorphage? Like, let's be real. So it just means that your opponent can't special summon from the extra deck. I mean, we can't either, but we're not really using our extra deck. So it's pretty cool. You know, it's got 2750 attack. It's 8 stars, so it's easily searchable. The only thing to know about this is you can send it to the grave off of one of these card effects, but when it's on the field and destroyed, it's going to go to the pendulum zone. So once this guy's on the field, you really do want to protect him. Next, we're playing 2 copies of Divine Dragonlord Felgrand. When this card's special summoned, you target a monster your opponent controls or in their graveyard, banish it, and if you do, this card gains attack and defense equal to the banished monster's original level / rank times 100. So that's pretty cool. Usually puts it over 3000 attack, which is just nice. And then if this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can target a level 7 or 8 dragon monster in your graveyard, except Divine Dragonlord Felgrand, and special summon it. So I can grab any of our dragons, you know, Spirit of White, Amorphage Goliath. I find most of the time I'm doing this Felgrand effect once my board is set up, so I'm trying to get into Archbrave Dragon, so if it gets a Raigeki, Archbrave Dragon will go back to the graveyard. And yeah, just gives us some options there. And then last for monsters, I'm playing Blue Eyes Jet Dragon. Really cool boss monster for Blue Eyes deck that just works well in this. Other cards you control cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. Awesome, we like that. And of course, if Blue Eyes White Dragon is on the field or in the graveyard, when a card is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon this card from your graveyard, so pretty nice. Or the hand, which is pretty cool. And then, of course, at the start of the damage step, if this card battles, you can target a card your opponent controls and return it to the hand. So just really powerful cards, gives your card some effect protection, constantly resummons itself real easily. And of course, it you know, bounces a card to the hand. Does target, but you know, that's just a lot for a card. It's a good card to have. So glad to be playing a copy in the deck. And that is all my monsters. Next, taking a look at the spell cards, I'm playing 1 copy of Monster Reborn. Monster Reborn targets a monster in either graveyard and special summons it. But you want to special summon all these cards from the graveyard, so Monster Reborn's a good thing to have. Next, I'm playing a copy of Foolish Burial. Send a monster from your deck to the graveyard. Again, we want to get dragons in the grave, so that's pretty good. Next, I'm playing a copy of Reasoning. Your opponent declares a monster level from 1 to 12. Excavate the top cards of the deck until we excavate a monster that can be normal summoned or set. Then, if the monster is the same level as the one declared by your opponent, we send all excavated cards to the graveyard. If not, we special summon the monster and then send the remaining cards. So there's a lot of levels in this deck. Level 3, level 4, level 7, level 8. So it's kind of hard for your opponent to just pick out, especially if you open with Reasoning. Not too many people are just going to guess 7 or 8 right off the key. And even if you lose, like, you want your monsters in the graveyard anyway. So, you know, either way, it's usually just a win-win. We either summon the monster or get it in the grave. We go through a lot of cards in our deck, so pretty cool. Interesting thing, I have Reasoning at 1 because I believe it's limited in the TCG, but the fact here, we see that it's not limited, so I am considering playing maybe more copies of this card, especially since it's not once per turn, which is pretty interesting, so definitely something I may be trying out here in the future. Next, I'm playing a copy of Terraforming. We're using Dragon's Ravine in this deck because it's very good, and it's so good that we want to play this card that searches it. Next, we're playing 2 Dragon Shrine. This sends a dragon monster from our deck to the graveyard. Then, if the monster we send is a dragon normal monster, you can send 1 more dragon monster from your deck to the grave. So this is nice. We start by sending Blue Eyes or Dragon Spirit of White, whichever one we need. Spirit of White counts as a normal monster in the graveyard, so then we get to send 1 more. Usually Amorphage Goliath or Archbrave, depending on if we have another way to get the others into the graveyard. And, you know, that's pretty cool. Mill 2 Dragon. Next, we're playing Return of the Dragon Lords. Target a level 7 or 8 dragon monster in your graveyard and special summon it. Then if a dragon monster you control will be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can banish this card instead. So that's pretty nice. Can summon any of our dragons from the grave, get their effects. Really nice to summon Archmorphage Goliath with this, so you can get it out on the opening turn. Summon it with this, and then have protection for it, which makes it a whole lot harder to deal with. So definitely a card that's pretty good. You know, we want to see it. Next, we're playing 3 Pot of Extravagance. Not a lot of extra deck summoning we're doing in this, specifically because we're trying to turn extra decks off with Amorphage Goliath. So our extra deck is mostly good to become card advantage. We banish 3 to 6 cards face down, draw a card for every 3. So, you know, we banish 6, draw 2. Now we can't activate any more draw cards, which does have a little anti-synergy if card trooper gets destroyed on the same turn. But for the most part, we're fine with that. Next is 3 copies of Dragon Ravine. We can discard a card from our hand to activate one of these effects. We're not using the Dragunity effect of all because there's no Dragunities. We're mostly just sending a dragon monster from the deck to the grave. So we can pitch an Amorphage Goliath out our hand and then send Archbrave Dragon from the deck to the graveyard to get Amorphage Goliath out before our opponent can start making plays and stuff like that. So it's very good. Gets rid of dead dragons in your hand, dead cards in your hand, and sends, targeted whichever dragon you're trying to get into the grave. Next, I'm playing 2 copies of Ruins of the Divine Dragon Lord. This card's pretty cool. It's kind of like a skill drainish type floodgate that just synergizes with this deck and doesn't cost much dust. If a monster is special summoned, except from the graveyard, while you control a level 7 or 8 dragon monster, negate that face-up special summon monster's effects until the end of this turn. So that's pretty nice. Special summoning happens a lot, and usually your opponent's climbing further by the effects of their special summon monsters. So if we turn those off, that becomes pretty obnoxious to deal with. This card can also send a face-up card our control to the graveyard to special summon a Dragon Lord token. So if we get Archbrave Dragon back on the field, we can send it to the grave so that Archbrave is now in the grave and contribute its effects on the next turn. And that's pretty cool. It gets us, a little token that we can use to tribute off, get something dead out of our hand. And of course, if this card's in the graveyard, we can send a level 7 or 8 dragon monster from our hand or field to add it back to the hand and play it again. So even a little recursion here, good to the theme of the Dragon Lords. So a pretty nice floodgate. It comes in handy, especially if you can get this and you can't get to Amorphage Goliath. Next, let's talk about trap cards. I'm playing 2 copies of Solemn Judgment. Solemn Judgment is simply a card that allows us to negate a summon or spell a trap card by paying half our life points. Once we have a Amorphage Goliath or some kind of lock set out on our opponent that's kind of locking them out of doing things, whether it's through the floodgate here or the floodgate monster, they're going to have a few outs to it, and we want to make sure we have the no button ready for when they play that out. Considering playing this at 3, we'll see. These trap card lineup is definitely something I'm testing with, but this is just where it's at right now. Next, I'm playing 2 copies of Call the Haunted. It's just a continuous trap card that targets a monster in our graveyard and special summons it. We can use this to time a special summon of Amorphage Goliath or Divine Dragon Lord Felgrand, get their effects, catch our opponent off guard with it, which is a pretty nice thing to have, especially because Master Duel just gives you this card when you start up, so didn't even have to do anything to make it. Next, I'm playing a copy of Summon Limit. This is kind of a backup plan for if I don't have a Morphage or Divine Dragon Lord set up. If I can get Summon Limit, I can probably flip it, and if they can't out it after they summon 2 monsters, then they're just stuck on 2 monsters. Usually that's not enough to OTK, and it gives me more time. Summoning more than twice per turn in this deck is possible, but not that commonplace, so it's not useful. So it's not too much of a hindrance on us, and certainly hinders a lot of better decks even more. I'm considering playing this at 2, just because it's just a pretty good thing to have. And next, World Legacy Secret. When this card is activated, target a level 5 or higher monster in your graveyard, special summon it. It's just like Call the Haunted, but for level 5 or higher monsters, which is fine. That's what we want to be special summoning anyway. And, it's a normal rarity, so not important dust for that. So just something to fill the deck space, and that is it for the main deck. Not going to spend too long on the extra deck. You don't go into it very much since you're trying to turn it off, so I haven't spent any dust on it, so my extra deck is just all completely filler for a pot of extravagance fodder. Now, if you have some good rank 8s, things like Hope Harbinger or, things like that, or some rank 7s, things that you can turn your big dragons into and then maybe detach to get them back into the grave. That's probably what I would do. Some generic Link 2s or Dragon Link 2s to get the dragons back into the grave. If you got stuff like that, definitely throw it in. Better than throwing in things you can't use at all. But I wouldn't worry too much about spending dust on it because most of the time you're just going to be sitting on a Morphage Goliath or your Floodgates, and the extra deck monsters wouldn't matter too much anyway. So here's a little clip of the deck in action here. We're up against our opponent who's playing like a Banish anti-meta deck. Very strong against this kind of deck that wants things into the grave. And our hand is kind of but we managed to get some stuff off. So we start our turn. We're going to play Starliege Safeford. We're going to send Blue Eyes into the grave to get Divine Dragon Lord Felgrand. I see my opponent doesn't have an extra deck, so a Morphage Goliath isn't going to be too handy. And getting Blue Eyes into the grave right now means when Safeford is removed, we can summon this Jet Dragon that is in our hand. And we got a Solemn Judgment. We're just going to have to hope that will ride us off. Our opponent starts their turn. They draw a card. They play Pot of Duality. I'm like, okay, they're not going to special summon a lot. I see that Macrocosmos and Banisher of Radiance, and I get, They give Macrocosmos. Very problematic. Then they play Hand Destruction. Not sure why they're playing this, but this really basically turns our game from until pretty much guaranteed win, because we're able to send out Archbrave and Divine Dragonlord Felgrand, getting them into the grave before any banishing effects can happen. They summon Fossil Dyna. Now I want to be able to special summon before using Battle Phase. I probably should have just Battle Phased over it, but I don't know. I'm not feeling too worried about that face down because I just believe it's Macrocosmos. So I'll Solemn Judgment the Fossil Dyna. Get it out of here. That way I can special summon on my standby phase. My opponent sends 2 cards. Alright, draw phase, and then of course standby phase. Archbrave Dragon is going to summon Divine Dragonlord Felgrand. They're going to play Macrocosmos right now before I can send anything to the grave. Perfectly fine. They're going to summon out Helios. Archbrave is going to summon out Divine Dragonlord. We are going to banish Helios. Get it up to 32. Then we're going to play Return of the Dragonlords. They are going to Solemn Judgment. That baits that out, but that gets their life points just low enough that I can KO them. And I don't really know how much option they had there, because if I coming out Archbrave Dragon and destroy Macrocosmos, well, then I'm just going to be able to go off. And, that sums it up. So that is it for my Felgrand Master Duel deck profile. Pretty fun deck to play, and certainly reliable enough to get you through low ranks pretty well. And also, it's not a very expensive deck. The Dragon's Ravines are a bit much, and most things are supers, which I don't know. I don't have too much trouble getting super rares. So anything that doesn't have a ton of ultras I consider pretty cheap, especially because these Blue Eyes are free. Terraforming and Foolish Burial, all these cards go a long way into a lot of things. And yeah, it's just pretty fun. Definitely something I'm going to be playing around with more, and there's definitely improvements to be made on this build, so I'm going to keep tinkering with it and keep playing it. It's just a cool thing to have on the deck list here. So thanks for checking out the video. Let me know what you think. Love to see what you're doing with Felgrand and those types of cards in Master Duel, and I will catch you all in the next one.